Toby?
What does it mean to be successful?
Look at me. Do I look successful? Because if I don't look it, I can't give you the answer.
Fair enough.
It's a difficult question because let me kind of put that question in the context of, say, relationships. And I'll start with kind of superficial and just, go from there. Or from being crude to being hopefully somewhat profound. Imagine at the age of 18, you find yourself in the grips of various hormones, certain forces. Let's just call those the sexual energy that all of us have, okay? And I suppose when you go to a party in hopes of mingling with someone, the definition of success at the age of 18 when it comes to relationship is that I just want to go out there, find someone who's attractive, and maybe have a good night with them. Maybe 2 good nights, maybe a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, doesn't really matter. But that is a definition of success. So when you're rejected, you kind of go home being angry. When you're accepted, you go to your friends and you say, yeah, I went out with Janet or Jackson or whatever, and we did A, B, C, D, I'm a man. That's your definition. And let's just say you're a nice enough and mature enough a guy where you're not just going to bed people, you're going to just stay in the same relationship. Okay? Now, what usually happens in long-term relationships is that initially it's the sexual passion, the physical stuff, that becomes at the very centerpiece of the relationship. As time passes, like anything else that takes place in life, if you are able to kind of stretch your memory back to our previous conversations, what usually happens is time gets into stuff and things begin to rust. In other words, once time gets in, the thing that used to have a lot of glaze all of a sudden becomes very dull. Hello. I used to wash cars and buff them, and so sometimes cars used to come to us and their kind of paint was oxidized because of the sun and the rain and just the weather itself. And then we had this high-speed buffing machine, and we had special kind of liquid or wax. You kind of put it on the car and the buffing pad, and it was high-speed. In a few minutes, this new shine would come out. And then before you know it, the entire car would be shining, okay? But what is happening is that the paint itself has gone bad. What you're doing is you're just kind of giving this paint some time to relax, okay? The shine comes out, and about 2 or 3 weeks into it, it slowly becomes dull again. That's what happens with everything. Whether you have a cell phone, a new relationship, again, it doesn't really matter. And so sex used to be at the very centerpiece of your relationship. Now, you realize when you guys go out to a coffee shop or have dinner, you have this newfound desire, which is, I want to engage in conversations that are meaningful. And without really you knowing, psychologically, you have changed the nature of your relationship. You just don't want to just be in bed all the time. You actually want to go out and enjoy your companion's presence. Not by just walking around holding hands looking at the sunset, though there's a time for that as well, but you really want to have meaningful conversations. And it comes without warning, really. It doesn't knock on your door and say, but by the way, listen, 2 weeks' time, I'm going to come by and I want to force you to have a meaningful conversation. You're just sitting and you kind of say, I'm getting tired of this, okay? And so you have redefined, or you want to redefine your relationship. And success is no longer being in the bedroom with your companion. It's being in an open space and looking at her and wanting to be engaged psychologically, intellectually, emotionally in a conversation that's valuable for you. Time passes and you realize, well, you know, sex is good, but it's not that important. Conversation is good. What you really, really want is commitment. So you look at your companion and you say, listen, you and I have been hanging out for about 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Are you ready to settle down? And now she can look at you and say, Toby, listen, we have great sex. Say, yeah, that's fine, but I want commitment. And I want my commitment to be beyond the bedroom. So, well, we have great conversation. I understand that. I want commitment. I want to go out and buy you a ring. And then I want you and I to go somewhere so you can pick a ring for me. I'll pay for it. Okay? And then time passes and you're fully committed now, I guess. Now comes the big moment where you look at it and say, you know, we've been going out together for about 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Let's get married. Now, it changes everything now. You know, before you would say, oh, I don't need a piece of paper. But you do now. Right? It's kind of like added protection, just in case. You know, you can take it to court and get everything. Now, if you're paying attention, the definition of success for you in this relationship keeps changing after a few months. So what used to be categorized as success is now a failure. It wouldn't be considered a failure, but it's just not sufficient anymore. Okay. Now, let's say she says yes, that unlucky woman. She says yes to you. After 2, 3 years, you know, let's say hopefully you have a good job, she has a good job, you guys save your money, you don't drink, you don't smoke, you don't spend money on your useless friends, since you don't really have any. That's just a facade. Let's say you're sitting together watching a sitcom on TV. You know, it's, what is it called? Something with my family. It's an old show. And I'm sorry?
No, I was just thinking, I was trying to
Yeah,
figure out
some
the
show
show.
that has kids, you know, 2 adults, a man and a woman, or a man and a man, woman and a woman. I don't anymore know anymore these days. But anyways, you look at this companion who say, Jacqueline? She says, yes, Toby. I'd like a family. You want dogs, cats? She asks. No, I want children. What do you mean? I love my body. I like to keep it just this particular shape. Says, I understand that, I appreciate, respect that, but I want children. Now, it's usually women who desire that more than men, okay? But let's just say, since you're a weirdo, you would like that. And she looks at me, she says, but can we wait? Says, no, you know, we've been going out since we were 10. You know, we're now 15, I think it's time. Okay. And she says, okay. Now that is a definition of success now. Okay. Now, she comes to you one morning and she says, Toby, says, yes, I'm late. Well, I know you're late for work, hurry up. No, I'm not late. Oh wait, I'm just late. Are you saying I'm going to be a father? And she sits and cries. She says, yes, sadly so. And so you have one. And let's say you name your first child. You want a boy or a girl, Toby? Let's say a boy. Come on, man. It needs to be a boy. And let's just say you name him Amir. God forbid. Okay? Now you have a good couple of weeks with this kid of yours. And then you kind of sit back and you say, I was an only child. All my friends lived in my imagination. It was a horrifying experience. I want my child to have a life companion, a brother or a sister. Now remember, once you get married and once you have a child, you're far too exhausted to be in the bedroom with your companion. It happens once in a while, don't get me wrong, but it's really no longer that interesting. Conversations is mostly now revolving around diapers, formulas, you know. You kind of have discussions or let's just say arguments, if not fights, that, you know, she's spending money on buying this kid shoes and pants. It's no longer about philosophy, the meaning of life. If God exists, if you have a soul, what's going to happen to you when you end up in hell? Okay? Now, the two of you will sit and say, yeah, you're right, you know, it's better to have it now. You don't want too much of an age gap. Then you say, can we afford it? Now, go back to how this relationship started and where it is now. You were lasered at your woman. You can hardly look at her now. She's like disgusting. And she looks at you with a good amount of disgust as well. Not to mention the politics of life. Because the moment your relationship becomes committed, conflicts begin. And then you have to resolve them in a way that's mature, otherwise it'll just be like a volcano. Everything will just turn upside down. If you have a child, it's going to be disastrous. And then you realize that yes, the two of you can in fact afford a second child. Now remember, the first one was an imposition. She didn't want it, you wanted it. So you force that upon her. The second one is political. You're going to be looking at your child and say, he needs a companion. Friendship sucks. They're unstable, uncertain. You can't depend on friends. Especially these days. And kids are expensive. Okay. And let's say you have one kid that's 6, the other one that's 5, let's just say. Your conversation begins to change. And remember, this is all within the context of what it means to be a successful human being. Right? Before the relationship, you're independent, you can do whatever, but it didn't really make you that happy after a while, so you wanted a relationship. But then just being with this woman wasn't really that successful after all, you wanted a family. So you have a child, just be content, don't be so greedy, but no. Worries, troubles get in, now you have a second one. And then you say, well, you know, we need to send them to school. You look around, Oakland, public education, are you kidding? They're not bad, but they're not great. Remember the story of the Buddha. Any parent, every parent desires their kids to go into the best schools, to be far removed from the difficulties of life. All of us. If you have parents, they've done their best to make sure you don't turn out to be a criminal. And all parents fail. That's the story of the prodigal son. It doesn't matter how good of a father or mother you are, your son will eventually revolt. The best you can do as a parent is to keep an open door policy. Your son will eventually regret after having ruined his life. You know, his mother can only tell him so many times, go to school, go to school, go to school. Eventually he's going to say no. He thinks that he knows better. He's going to go out there, live paycheck to paycheck. Eventually comes to realize that, well, you know, that's no way to kind of keep a family afloat. And then one day he's going to call his mom and say, Mom, you're right. You can have $10. Okay. Now, once you have children, two of them, well, you find yourself in the bedroom once in a while and an accident happens. It's called the third child. And that's what a third child usually is, an accident. Unless you come from Ukraine, where, it's a tradition where you have 14, 15, 16 kids. Okay. You wake up at 6, change them, take him here, take him there, pick him up from here, take him to another place, come home. And then you sit and you reflect on how your day has been. And now your definition of success changes. You look at your wife and your kids and you say, leave me alone. I want like an hour to myself. Now you would think that you would be very constructive, productive in that hour. No, you sit on the sofa and you watch like mind-numbing shows. The Devil's Kitchen, Chopped. All these ridiculous shows that give you nothing really. But you love your kids, you love your wife, and they like you as well. Not love you, just like you, tolerate you. Your kids are now 20, 30. Your wife is all wrinkled up. I mean, like, you don't look too shabby yourself. For some strange reason, at a certain stage in your life, you kind of evaluate your entire life. So let's say you're 55. You've been working for the past 30, 35 years from 9 to 5. Dropping off the kids, picking them up, taking them from soccer to basketball, from basketball to the gym, all sorts of different things. You have given your time, your energy, all the resources that you've had to your family. Your kids are gone. You look at your wife. You want to now make the last few years of your life relatively meaningful. And you do something you've never done before. For the first time in your life, your definition of success is doing things for yourself, but not just anything. Now, I'm not talking about like going out and having affairs. I'm not talking about like getting drunk, going to parties, being stupid. You want your life to be meaningful in a reflective way. For the first time, you want to be a recluse. You want to live a solitary life. Still in the house with your family. But you want to be left alone. You want to read. You want to write. You want to paint. Maybe you want to do music. Because you've come to a place where you say, if I'm laying on my deathbed, I want to know that at least I've done something that is meaningful for me in this life. That's your answer. What does it mean to be successful? Now, if you happen to be very, very unlucky, and let's just say because this is a philosophy class, let's inject this personality into the story, which is you running into a Socrates-like. Okay. Let's say you are married, you have children, you have a job, your life is relatively comfortable, and let's just say categorize it as successful. You run into a Socrates, and what does he tell you? A human being does not live by bread alone. But what is bread? Well, bread is sex. Bread is having a job. Bread is having a companion. Bread is having children. Bread is taking care of your family. Those are things you can see, you can taste, you can hear, you can touch, you can smell. But there is this longing that lives inside you. I don't know why it's there. In Persian poetry, for those of you who don't know what Persian is, it's Iran. For those of you who don't know what Iran is, it's a country in the Middle East. I think Westerners have a tendency of pronouncing it Iran. That's where I'm from. We have a poet whose name is Hafez, around the 12th century. He likens the human being to a tulip, the red one, the red kind. And he says the petals of the tulip is red. If you look at the very center of this flower, it's black. And it's black because it's burnt. It's burnt because at the moment of creation, when God created everything, including human beings, He put His finger at the very center of the human being and burnt his heart and said, this black spot in your heart will remain. It'll create a longing inside you, a dissatisfaction, an unhappiness that can only be resolved if you come back home, prodigal son. If you become spiritual, if you find a Socrates or a Plato or a Malcolm X or any of the heroes that we worship. And I'm not talking about modern heroes like Snoop Dogg and Eminem and those people. I'm talking about people who have had an impact on society in a positive way, on human thought. Okay. Now, if you run into a Socrates and he tells you man does not live by bread alone, and you happen to be at the right place in life, where these are just not sound bites, they just go inside you. You don't know why. I mean, you're sitting there, your brother is sitting there, your sister is sitting there, and someone says, a human being does not live by bread alone. Your sister laughs. It makes your brother curious, but it creates a deep sense of longing inside you. Why, how, when, who? You don't know. At least I don't know. I don't really care to know. All I know that happens. And all of a sudden your definition of success changes. I mean, it's very, very, very troubling. But the problem with man does not live by bread alone, it means that now you're looking for something that the senses can't reach. You've never seen, you've never experienced. So, again, consider yourself to be very fortunate. Because your friends are mediocre. Maybe your parents are mediocre. It's nothing negative. It's good to be mediocre in many cases because you don't expect ridiculous things from yourself. I mean, the fact that you don't want to be like Tiger Woods, like Kobe Bryant, like Michael Jackson, they save your life. They can come to class and they can just do ridiculous things with your life. You're not obligated, you're not focused, you're not passionate intensely. That robs you of rest. So being mediocre has its rewards. There is, this voice that comes through once in a while saying that your life amounts to nothing. But you're a professional distractor. You can distract yourself easily, Read fantasy books. Now, the other problem with the definition of success is that if you're not a genius, if you're not a Mozart, if you're not a Kobe Bryant, it comes from the outside. Remember, if you're a Mozart, when you come out of your mother's womb, you don't scream, you don't cry, you don't say mama or daddy. You say violin. You say piano. You're a genius at the time of your birth. No one has to tell you anything. That's what a genius is. It doesn't need to be told what to do, how to do it, when to do it. Okay. You and I, on the other hand, we are victim of the external forces. Go with a crummy woman or a crummy man who've had dicey or checkered history. And if it happens to be your first relationship, they will ruin, if you're not careful, all the relationships you will have in the future. It's very rare for you and I to come in the presence of someone who's a genius, who's good at what they do. Because they can change our definition of success. I mean, imagine you wanted to, say, study history, and you take a math class with Pythagoras, okay? Long dead, a Greek philosopher, a few thousand years ago. And Pythagoras does something really interesting with math. He talks about order, he talks about discipline, he talks about harmony, he talks about logic. And for some strange reason, math is no longer math. It's like a symbol that connects the entire universe together. And that inspires you. The problem is this. You just needed a math class to get your master's degree in history. But having taken Pythagoras now, you say, you know what? Forget history. I want to major in math. And now you start from scratch. Your wife says, what are you doing? I'm going back to school. For what? Math. Math. Who does math these days? I do. Why? I love Socrates. Love Socrates? You should love me and the kids. Yeah, I love you too, but I really love Plato. I mean, what's his name? Pythagoras. And then you just sit in the room and read books on math. You do problems that Pythagoras had given you. And your wife knocks on the door and says, I haven't seen you in a week. What's wrong with you? What are you doing in there? Are you having an affair? You say, yeah, with Pythagoras. You know, and 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks later, you open the mailbox and there is this envelope. Those big yellow kinds. And you look at it. The forms need your signature. Your wife is leaving you. All because of Pythagoras. And your kids will never forgive you. One has become a drunk. The other has become homeless. All because of you.
About the third one.
Killed himself. All because of you. See what passion does? It's called philosophy. The love of wisdom. But we'll talk about those things later on. Was that a okay answer to your question? Your question was about success, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Should I continue or just let it go?
I know not to go to parties. It doesn't lead anywhere good.
It really, I mean, look, there is this story, it's in the Gospel of Barnabas. You can find the name Barnabas in the Gospel of Luke. It's not one of those canonical Gospels, the Gospels that have been kind of approved by the Catholic Church. But there's a story in the Gospel where Jesus is running really, really fast. I mean, you know, if you're a mellow guy, a hippie guy like Jesus Christ, you don't run, you just walk slow, you know, one of the, like these new age gurus that say be mindful at every step. You know, Jesus is running. It's so fast that his jacket has fallen to the ground. And his disciples kind of run after him, pick up his jacket, you know, slow him down and say, what's going on with you, man? And he doesn't say anything except to just point over there. And his disciples look and say, they're just people. They're just people. Why are you running away from people? And he kind of looks at them and he says, run away from people as if you have seen a lion. People have nothing good to offer you. They really, 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 really don't. If you're mediocre, they do. If you're in search of something profound, This is usually a problem that women have. Some men too, but women have when they get to be like 28, maybe 27. They've had a good amount of, various relationships here and there. And then they come to a place where they say, I really want to have a relationship with a man who is mature. 9 billion people on this planet. They can't find one. This is what happens when you have a purpose. You want someone mature to be a companion, a father to your children. And all of a sudden, they can't find any. There is another problem to your question. I think no human being could ever be successful. You've seen that movie Schindler's List?
No, but I know the premise.
Yeah. Anyways, this is a guy who works for the Germans, the Nazis. Something about him opens up. He becomes compassionate. He sees the Jews as his own, body, an extension of himself. He begins to rescue them, free them. And then in the end, he comes to realize he has a ring. He could have sold that ring to rescue yet another couple, Jewish people. That's regret. Man, you've saved like thousands of Jews. Be happy, be content, but no, regret comes forth. The problem, I think, with us human beings is that you're always going to feel as if you have shortchanged yourself in some shape or form. You're Jesus Christ, man. You have self-knowledge, you have God knowledge, you have world knowledge, you have social knowledge, you have spiritual knowledge. But no, you can't reach people. You're Socrates. You have this eloquence. You're this great orator. But people just don't get you, and you rather die. All human beings reach a moment where they realize that they have messed up. You could have a great intellectual life, but maybe your emotional life has nothing to give you. Maybe you have a great emotional life, but you just don't understand anything intellectually. Maybe you have a great emotional life rooted in your intellect, but your physical life sucks. Maybe everything is good, you just fail to take care of your parents. Maybe you die sick with a good amount of pain, where you realize, why the hell did you spend your life reading books, taking care of people? Your health was the most important thing. It doesn't matter where you go, man. You're always going to look yourself in the mirror and you say, damn, I messed up. You will never, ever, ever be successful, Toby. Ever. Except like a minute here, a minute there. Most of it, they just struggle. Good luck. I'm sorry. Is this not inspiring you? Ricardo?
This is why I'm afraid to ask you a question.
What do you mean? Well, let's give it a try. No, look, just ask a question. I'll be gentle, I promise.
You can talk to me. Okay.
Anyone else? Really? Sarah. Matthew.
I don't really have a question, but when I was doing the assignment, And I was reading like I actually like read it this time. Last time I took the class, I just read the first part, and then I didn't really like read the whole thing. So I wanted to see like, and I don't know, you put like there was like hella just number points of like questions on like it's like how much do we spend on like on porn, on weed, on alcohol, on this that. I was like just these questions alone just made me hella think about like just how much the world does like actually, especially the United States, spends on that type of shit.
Yeah.
And I used to fucking drink every day, smoke every day, like do that shit too. So like it just helped make me think about like, cause I don't do it anymore either because of it. Like I just thought about it, like there's no point in doing that shit anymore. Like it doesn't help me at all. So why do that stuff? But it just made me hella like think about everything.
Yeah.
And like just I don't know, helping me think really deep like about that stuff and how like people should stop like indulging in that stuff so much because it's a part of people's life like entirely, and the advertisement stuff too, like how like that's just what they don't advertise, the good stuff. That's what they advertise, like marijuana posts, alcohol posts on the freeway you're driving. That's all you see on the billboards,
Well, one of these days, if you guys are interested, we can talk about weed, marijuana, various forms of drugs and alcohol. But I think they're just footnotes. I think we can just talk about addiction and what they do to your personality, to the way you begin to think, what sort of emotions they create, and what sort of pathways they create inwardly as well as outwardly. So, yeah, the thinking it's in many ways, philosophical thinking is unnatural for us. It's unnatural because the world, it has all these kind of forces, all these things that are being thrown at you. And you just have to react to them very, very quickly. One of the nice things when you watch movies like James Bond, for example, or maybe action movies, Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible. One of the nice things about those movies is that the hero, James Bond, when someone attacks him, there is no pause in him. He knows exactly what he needs to do. He doesn't think about, well, why is, this guy being so violent? What is his background? He doesn't think about those things. Because the moment he was to think about or reflect about the history of the villain, he would probably be overcome with a good amount of compassion and empathy. And that would no longer allow him to be James Bond. This machine that he is. So in many ways, philosophical reflection kind of puts you on this pause where you become more objective. You're able to kind of like in the Gospel of Luke, you're able to put yourself in the shoes of another human being. And then you stop passing judgments. You stop really being so harsh on them. You try to figure out why is it that they are in this particular way? How can I help them? And that takes a lot of energy on your part. It's really unnatural for us. That's why I think creation doesn't create very many people like Malcolm X or Martin Luther or Socrates or Jesus Christ. They get one in a few thousands of years and they come here, they make some change and they go away. And then you have to wait for a long, long time.